Chapter 1 Years ago. I am going to teach you the art of selling, said King T'Chaka to his son T'Challa. Take this Buganda cloth, use it and learn everything there is to know about it. Tomorrow in a market town you will sell out all the Buganda cloths. Do not fail me. The following day a disguised T'Challa sat alone under the hood of a market stall with the cloths placed neatly in front of him. King T'Chaka spoke to him through an earpiece. Smile, boy, and keep a pleasant demeanor. Now use your knowledge of the cloth to formulate questions to ask shoppers. You want to find out if they are looking for cloth that is dependable, cost-effective, exclusive, convenient, and as a gift, said King T'Chaka. Never mind the ones who say no, just continue on to the next shopper. The 8-year-old T'Challa sold out the cloths by the end of the afternoon. That was not good enough, your techniques need work. Next week you shall return to the stall and I will not be around to coach you. Then we will see if you can repeat today's performance, said King T'Chaka. A month passed and T'Challa was able to repeat sales, all the while making deals with the direct supplier of the cloth to get more at a cheaper price. The margin T'Challa made went to the purchase of minuscule stock on the Wakanda Stock Exchange, aka Mary Kite. Still not good enough. Until you can teach your friend Taku the same techniques and make him capable of teaching others, then you have failed me, said King T'Chaka. T'Challa had a puzzled expression. Boy, when you become king you will have absolute power over men and women. If you desire a man's house he will have to give it to you and he will become your enemy. But if you are able to convince a man to give you his home by selling him the idea that it will benefit him in the long run, then he will become an ally. You can either rule with coercion or skill, that is why I am giving you these lessons, said King T'Chaka. Chapter 2 Wakandan economists did not believe in scarcity, they believed in abundance, hence the financial side of Wakanda's governance was based on the principle that money was always available. The monitoring of the money supply in the economy was done with the Jinka table that tracked physical fiat money, cryptocurrency, and other instruments of money in financial institutions. The Jinka table was in the underground level of the administration complex. Access to it required very high-level clearance because of the sensitivity of the information. Queen Mother Ramonda introduced T'Challa to the device when he became king. The bedazzling lights and the wavy movements of the columns did not distract T'Challa from the obvious observation that the abundance principle was based on the country's valuable vibranium mound. The financial security of the nation was too heavily dependent on the gift from the stars. To fix that problem, T'Challa laid the groundwork for the Wakanda Design Group company in his early international travels. He noticed how France used Elf Oil Company in Africa and the USA used Chiquita Co. in Latin America for state agendas. His company would do the same for Wakanda. Wakanda Design Group eventually had minority shares in tech firms, farms in Brazil, fiber optic cable manufacturers, niche equity houses, global audit firms and biotechs. None of the organizations knew that they were backed by Wakanda or its umbrella company. But all the business ventures were aligned with Wakanda's strategic financial security. The Universal Bank, aka Bank for International Settlements Switzerland, present day the grass cutter sword, did its duty in cutting open gods and protection spells. The user of the sword finished the massacre in a matter of seconds with his godlike speed. At his feet were the owners of the largest conglomerates on earth, each one with underworld ties. The victims groaned and cursed as Gorgon sheathed his sword. Like the international oil barons of the 1930s, the owners had met in secret to plan out the political and economic shape of the world for years to come. Gorgon wiped some fluid from the Japanese ceremonial mask that he wore. All of you will help in taking down the Wakanda Design Group, said Gorgon. The maimed CEO of the Rahkan Group crawled towards an exit. Gorgon went to him and pressed his foot on the man's hand. My reputation as a Hydra leader must not have been known to you, said Gorgon. He removed his mask and his eyes turned the CEO to stone. "Everyone look at him," said Gorgon. "Your bodyguards are dead, your mysticism destroyed and your bodies broken. I am in charge. Why the Wakandans? Why tempt the backlash?" asked someone. "Good question," said an aged man who appeared in the exit door. "I built the Wakanda design group and got nothing in return, so I will end it. The spoils will go to each of you." "Who are you?" asked a woman. "I am Achebe," replied the stranger. Chapter 3. Shuri's long grayish locks were braided by Vi in the Membek style. "Am I doing it too tight?" asked Vi. "No, it is fine." From the training hut, Shuri heard the rest of her in-laws in the family's compound. "I dreamt about resurrecting the Black Panther kings and queens for a third time. I was in the middle of their tombs and they called me by name," said Shuri. "You should tell your brother or mother," said Vi. "This stays between us. As far as they are concerned, you have completed the transfer of the Membek gifts from you to me without complications," said Shuri. "Here you go again, being prideful and stubborn. I have never experienced the things that you are speaking about with regards to the resurrection gift. The adjustment issues are with you. Does my son suspect?" "I think he does, but he wants more proof before confronting me," replied Shuri. "You are a strange woman provoking my poor Kana," said Vi. "Your son provokes me too. Look, I am not getting into husband and wife business. I am just saying, if you can avoid marital drama, please do," said Vi. The two women laughed. "The Hozamai Plateau, what are your intentions for our relationship?" asked Nokia. "To take it one day at a time," replied T'Challa. "So you will not be taking me to your mother anytime soon? What is this about? I have faced death in my spy work and I am concerned that I will not get married or have a family," replied Nokia. "Especially if I remain in a relationship with you." "Oh," said T'Challa. "Do you love me?" "Yes." He hugged her and kept her in his arms. "There are a few things I have to sort out, but I am committed to you," said T'Challa. "Do you feel pressured by me?" No, an alert on T'Challa's Kimoyo interrupted him. He kissed Nokia before checking it. Live surveillance footage of Gorgon's attack in the Universal Bank was on the screen, then came Achebe's speech. Shuri's face appeared on the screen. "Brother, I just got the Universal Bank feed." "Me too," said T'Challa. "I can't believe that is Achebe. We should strike him immediately. I will notify Kana and Okoi to safeguard Wakanda in our absence," said Shuri. "I agree. Where are you right now?" "By my mother-in-law, but I can be in Switzerland in seconds, so I don't need to be picked up." "I will meet you at the bank," replied Shuri. "A point to note is that Achebe might have anticipated our arrival," said T'Challa. "Point taken. Also, I am bringing Nokia as backup," said T'Challa. As far as the Black Panther knew, Achebe died from old age and was buried on the man's family compound 8 years ago. Achebe was the first president of Wakanda Design Group. He was hand-picked by T'Challa because of his outstanding record in finance and management of companies in Wakanda. T'Challa and Achebe had professional quarrels at times, but the Black Panther never took them personally. Achebe's insurance business that his family ran was doing well on the stock exchange when last T'Challa checked on it during Jinka season when quarterly results were released. So T'Challa was confused by the words of the Achebe person. Chapter 4. T'Challa and Nokia teleport to the bank. Nokia wore a standard assault mask and carried 2 chakras along with a pistol. Shuri ran from Wakanda to the Universal Bank in 8 seconds and met T'Challa. It was a Sunday morning in the closed-off high-end banking district. The Universal Bank was extremely exclusive because customers needed to arrive in helicopters to access the bank's front entrance. The Wakandans came upon the stone bodies of the helicopter pilots and bodyguards. The bank doors slided open and the attackers emerged. Gorgon in his ceremonial samurai apparel and Achebe in Wakanda garbs. The Black Panther's hypersense of smell told him that the person matched Achebe's scent as he remembered it to be. Achebe is dead. I personally helped the family to bury him, said T'Challa. Then who stands before you? Asked Achebe. A threat to Wakanda, replied T'Challa. I left my household to work for you based on the idea that was sold to me and I came out worse for it, said Achebe. This is the first and only warning to surrender, said T'Challa. There will be no fighting today. You have better things to see about in Wakanda, said Achebe. Two shadows converged over the helipad. They belonged to helicarriers that had the Hydra symbol on them. Similar airships appeared above the capital of Switzerland, Bern, which could be seen from the bank. Attack us and we level the city, said Achebe. A red light scanned the old man and Gorgon, then the man vanished. The helicarriers faded into a vapor. Those were not cloaked ships. They made interdimensional jumps, said T'Challa as he interpreted what his hypersenses and the scanners built into his uniform told him. What's happening home? Asked Nokia. Nothing so far as being reported by Kana and Okoye, said Shuri as went through her kimoyo. Try the finance channels, said T'Challa. Shuri did so. A rumor is being spread that the Wakanda Design Group specialty bonds are in jeopardy of not being honored because the state mishandled the funds and the bondholders will not get back their money in the specified time, said Shuri. Which is tomorrow and that will cause an uproar in the financial circles, said T'Challa. He pressed his golden Panther amulet and the computer teleported the group to the Jinka table. What is this place? Asked Nokia. Wakanda's money is monitored from here, replied Shuri. T'Challa ran a filter program that targeted the Wakanda Design Group. The specialty bonds were to finance an expansion drive into businesses in other dimensions. Payments were received in cryptocurrency from dividends and were to be funneled back to the bondholders who were private citizens, insurance houses, and equity firms. The Jinka table showed that the dividends were not paid out to Wakanda. Achebe has been presumably dead for 8 years now. He is not supposed to know about this operation, said T'Challa. There are leaks and moles in the company, said Nokia. I will check for a body at his burial site just to be sure, said Shuri. How does Hydra fit into this? Asked Nokia. It goes back to the Hydra-Wakanda wars at the start of the 20th century. There was even a file on the resurrection of a Wakanda commando by Hydra who later joined their ranks. It was never confirmed, replied T'Challa. Chapter 5 Shuri entered the Achebe compound in the form of a flock of black birds. She settled on the tomb marked as Achebe's and meditated. She sensed a corpse, then she linked to its essence. If she linked too hard it would resurrect the person. But she was gentle with the linking and she communicated with the body. Shoo you birds, said an android helper that came over the tomb. Shuri flew away and went to the Commando Division headquarters. She became human again and debriefed Kana and Okoye. The body is Achebe's, said Shuri. So we are dealing with an impersonator. I checked the travel logs of the family. None of them have left the country since Achebe died, said Kana. Their calls, emails, and texts show no indication that they know anything about his supposed resurrection. We ran the communications through a decipher just in case the messages were in code, said Okoye. T'Challa mentioned before he left that a Wakanda commando was taken by Hydra a century ago. I want to find out who this person was, said Shuri. The abandoned vibranium mine on a parallel Earth. The last of the vibranium was mined a quarter of a century ago on the parallel Earth, yet the Hydra leader liked to visit it because it reminded him of home. In another life, the Wakanda Commando's plane was shot down by Hydra agents. He was taken prisoner and brainwashed. Then in a strange turn of events he was chosen to accompany a Hydra team to a parallel Earth. The team perished except for him. He grew the Hydra One World government doctrine, gained followers and power. He won the world wars and became supreme leader, but was affectionately called the Wielder. Achebe and Gorgon came to the mine to report on their operation. Later Wielder was joined by his wife Coney the Black Panther. Next story, The Numbers Game Chapter 1, Shuri's Dream. He had the head of a pharaoh, the body of a lion and the tail of a cobra. He looked down at Shuri while he stepped from one Black Panther tomb to another. Her defiled ancestors shouted her name from their resting places in protest. Shuri anamorphed into the Korra war eagle, which rivaled the size of the giant intruder into the Valley of Kings and Queens. The Sphinx leapt at her with its claws unsheathed, and then the Kimoyo alarmed. Shuri awoke in her commando division office. It was a late hour in Wakanda and the central city skyline ran across her office window. She tried to remember what exactly happened during her dream besides being called by her ancestors, but everything was vague. The Kimoyo vibrated on the desk, so she took the call. "This is Nick Fury. There are no records of a Wakandan taken as a prisoner in the Hydra archives, says my source." "Thank you," said Shuri. "Just a reminder. Your brother and I honored each other's favor for a favor. I hope the trend continues with you." "It will," said Shuri. She sighed and rubbed her eyes after the call ended. After 2 days since the Wakanda Design Group defaulted on its payment to investors, there were no solid leads on the perpetrators behind the scheme. Shuri contacted Okoye about the investigation into the tampering of the internet switch junctions, which led to the bailout money issued from the Jinka table not reaching the Wakanda Design Group on time to pay the investors. Okoye said that her team pored over an ocean of code and a breakthrough was imminent. Shuri resumed the compilation of persons employed in the Wakanda Design Group under its first president. She wondered if T'Challa was having better luck. Jekyll Island, USA. It was on Jekyll Island that bank owners and congressmen met in secret to write the law that made the Federal Reserve Bank the most powerful agency in America, even more powerful than the president. And now it was on the same island that the Federal Reserve Bank wanted T'Challa's input into the regulation of money moving to and from Earth by people in the Omniverse. T'Challa was invisible to the naked eye until he got the confirmation that the spies on the house were neutralized by his lover Nokia. David Greenspan sat at the historic table where the greatest deceit unknown to man took place. He was on the 5th reread of his newspaper when T'Challa sat opposite to him. "Thanks for coming. It's nice that Reed Richards was able to contact you for me," said Greenspan. "What is this really about?" "Money and power," replied Greenspan. "I am a god who can cut $1 trillion check with no assets to back it. If the man in the street did the same, then it would be called fraud. The difference between me and him is that I have constitutional power to create money out of thin air once it is on a piece of paper marked Federal Reserve Bank. I control the supply of money in America, and central banks worldwide have to follow whatever tune I set because the US dollar is the global default reserve currency. I know that Wakanda does not have a central bank per se, but you get my point." "Yes, and I already know these things, so get to the point," said T'Challa. "Well, my power was dwindled with the advent of decentralized digital money held on encrypted online ledgers, the so-called cryptocurrencies. Now my power will further diminish with the opening up of omniverse travel to the public. Money is leaving the system to be used on parallel Earths. Illegals are sending reparations back to their home multiverse Earths. These activities have to be regulated through laws and enforced by agencies imbued with arresting powers until the Federal Reserve Bank can adjust. Then the laws will be changed to become more lenient," said Greenspan. "I agree in principle, since organized crime from our Earth and parallel ones can take advantage of the present situation. The demand side of the economic money equation will be grossly affected with interdimensional open trade, said T'Challa. As someone with hands-on experience with other Earths, your expertise will be greatly appreciated in the framing of the policies. The cabal who created the Federal Reserve Bank stayed in this house for days writing out its legislative framework and the misdirection strategies to use in the media to get the public support for the bill to be passed in Congress. Sadly, we may have to do the same, said Greenspan. T'Challa left the god of money with a dreadful realization on his mind based on the meeting. The financial upheaval in Wakanda was an organized hit by persons who wanted to circumvent Wakanda's movement of money on parallel Earths. He met Nokia on the stealth plane. She was a beautiful molasses black woman, with styled kinky hair, large eyes, and very opinionated. T'Challa kissed his lover and told her about his realization. "How do you know for sure?" asked Nokia. "Because Greenspan just gave the blueprint to me," replied T'Challa. "It is a numbers game that someone is playing and Wakanda needed to be removed from the board." Chapter 2. On a parallel Earth, the Hydra World Empire, Shang aka the Wielder and his wife Coney the Black Panther inspected another captured interdimensional jump site that the rebels used. In the past, the rebels had received weapons and money from other Earths. These were then circulated in the underground economy. The hit on Wakanda had disrupted the rebels and caused them to make mistakes. The couple returned to the capital city that was on the largest island in the African Ocean. The god of dreams Tutu awaited them in their official residence. "Shuri saw me on this occasion," said Tutu. "I understand. What did you learn from her?" asked Shang. "She is searching for information on you, the lost commando," replied Tutu. "Be more careful next time." "Are they close to solving the disappearance of their money?" "No, Tutu. Thanks for the report." "Give my tidings to your mother Neith," said Shang. The Sphinx left and the couple entered the room that kept a Jinka table which displayed the circulation of money in the empire. "We can trust its readings again," said Coney. "Indeed. Things are going back to normal. I want to commend you for this campaign. The use of our Skrull and deity allies was a master stroke," said Shang, and he kissed her. She pressed his chest where his heart was removed and placed in a guarded cave. Someday Coney would die of old age while he would live on as an immortal, but that would be many years from now. Chapter 3. T'Challa meditated on the sacred mountain where the heart-shaped herb grew. He was surrounded by the oversized black panthers that prowled the mountain for thousands of years, having been mutated by the vibranium meteor radiation. The online media in his country said that he was overly distracted, hence the mismanagement of the Wakanda design group. He took the criticism like an adult and said nothing to the press. He would answer them with results instead of excuses. The information his enemies used against him were known only to him, Shuri and their mother. All three had psi shields, so no telepath could enter their minds with ease. So he asked his sister and mother to place a sleep monitor on their heads as they went to sleep. Presently Shuri's sleep monitor was going haywire from the signals that were on his kimoyo. T'Challa closed back his eyes and ate a heart-shaped herb. The potency of the raw plant made him unconscious and he entered the dreamscape. He concentrated on his sister, but a sphinx appeared and clawed at him. T'Challa woke with a partial memory of what he saw. The cobra tail was the only image that was clear to him. He called Shuri's kimoyo and she answered. "You have been compromised," said T'Challa. "How?" "Through your dreams," replied T'Challa. "By a telepath." "I don't know for sure. Meet me on the sacred mountain." As soon as T'Challa stood, Shuri arrived in front of him due to her accelerated speed. Blue lightning bounced off her metallic skin that then reverted to human skin. She told him about the reoccurring dreams of their ancestors, asking her to resurrect them with her Membek gifts. "It might be that your subconscious mind knew you were under attack and wanted to help you," said T'Challa. But why was I susceptible? I am unclear on that, replied T'Challa. Shuri held his hands. I know what to do next time. I will make things right, brother, said Shuri. The following night's dream: the tombs of the kings and queens of Wakanda were the size of houses when Shuri walked through the avenues. The place was quiet. Shuri let her mind go, and then she heard heavy footsteps in all directions. The tombs rattled and the ancestors called her name. Shuri raised her fists and the tombs opened. The Black Panther warriors emerged, and each of them carried a spear of Bashanga. Seize the intruder, said Shuri. The beast broke through the ground and the Black Panthers fell into it. She turned into the Kora warbird, its eyes glowed in a red hue, a screech came out of its metal beak, the partly metallic feathers stood up as the wings expanded, and Shuri took flight. The Sphinx came up from the ground with the Black Panthers stabbing him. Shuri swooped down and grabbed the Sphinx by the neck with her metal talons. Then she tore out his eyes with her beak. The cobra head on the tail bit her side, but Shuri refused to let go of the Sphinx, pushing her talons deeper into the flesh. The Sphinx vanished and Shuri went along with him. Next story, The Red Queen. Neath Chapter 1. Contrary to popular belief, the Hydra organization that brainwashed Captain America and ran a one-world government was not the real Hydra. The real Hydra operated out of the Council on Foreign Relations in America and Chatham House in England. They were spawns from Cecil Rhodes' idea that an elite few must steer the world as they saw fit, with total disregard for national sovereignties, national constitutions, and human lives. The uncontrolled public expansion into the Omniverse by private citizens in Wakanda alarmed the Hydra-affiliated members of the Council on Foreign Relations, so they started the manipulation of the military leaders and the president by putting forth the claim that the expansion was a threat to America. Their manipulations were believed because the Council on Foreign Relations was the esteemed think tank on all matters outside of America. T'Challa suspected that they played a part in sabotaging his country's Omniverse financial network, so he sent his spy Nokia to steal their secrets. She followed David Greenspan, who was the head of the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank and a former member of the Council on Foreign Relations. One evening Greenspan visited a friend's ranch and he met a governor there. It appeared innocuous, but it was not, as an invisible Nokia later learnt when she followed them into a stable. Targeting Reed Richards' future foundation paid off. He introduced me to T'Challa, said Greenspan. What did he say? Asked the governor. Wakanda is oblivious to our work in the Omniverse, to the point that T'Challa believes that he will be on the team to manage the impact of the expansion on the world. I am speaking with Chang in a few hours and he will like this development, said the governor. Hail Hydra! Hail Hydra, said Greenspan. Chapter 2. The Dreamscape. In Shuri's mind, in the aftermath of her fight with the God of Dreams. Shuri, do you have children? Asked Neith. Yes, replied the spellbounded Wakanda Commando commander. How old? They are babies, replied Shuri, despite her attempt to keep her mouth shut and to get up from her knees. Twins? No, quadruplet girls. The goddess Neith held Shuri's chin compassionately. I shall take the life of one of your babies as retribution for my son's murder, said Neith. Your son attacked me first, said Shuri. It does not matter who attacked first. All that matters is that he was killed by you, said Neith. Touch my children and you will be dead as well, said Shuri. Threats, Shuri? Only the powerless make threats, that is why I don't. As soon as I leave here I am going to Wakanda, to your home and to your child. Shuri was concerned by the confidence in Neith's voice. It was like the goddess had murdered someone else's child before. A tear ran down from Shuri's eye and Neith wiped it away. Take my life instead, said Shuri. No, I want you to return to Wakanda to plan grandiose schemes of revenge on me that will all come to naught, replied Neith. I want you to live with the pain like I will have to. Neith withdrew from Shuri and the Wakandan felt a lump form in her throat. Shuri shouted but the words were inaudible. Suddenly T'Challa emerged from the surrounding darkness in his Black Panther ceremonial suit and he tackled Neith. The commotion broke Shuri out of the dreamscape and she awoke, but her brother T'Challa and Neith were not there. An oxygen mask was on her face. She felt a syringe in her neck and she was strapped to a medical bed. The Wakandan physicians over her asked if she was okay. No. Tell Kana to check on our children. And where is T'Challa? T'Challa's ship is still in your brain, replied a doctor. There was major activity and we lost contact with him. Take him out, said Shuri. She overheard another doctor on a communicator with Kana. Tell him to go in person to see our babies. Tell him to hurry, please. She imagined that Kana raced out of the adjacent observatory room, called in a commando jet and flew to his parents' home in the north of the country where the babies were staying for the night. Try to relax, it will help the homing beacon find T'Challa's ship, said a doctor. To Shuri's right was a hologram of her brain. The syringe in her neck acted like a tunnel for T'Challa's ship that was shrunk with PIM atom displacement particles to pass into her head. The purpose of the mission was to find out who was stealing information from Shuri's mind. Shuri forced herself to be calm. She closed her eyes and thought of nothing. We have found the ship, said one doctor. Commander Kana just called and said that your infants are safe and asleep, said the other doctor. Thank you, said Shuri. Chapter 3 T'Challa was not familiar with traveling in the inner space of the human body. Under normal conditions such a fantastic voyage should have been exhilarating, but it was the opposite due to the nature of the task. The science was fairly new to Wakanda and it was used in serious brain surgeries. The pilot was placed in a ship that had arms and lasers. The ship was hosed down with substance similar to cerebrospinal fluid, then the ship was miniaturized and sucked into a custom-made syringe. T'Challa was injected into his sister's carotid artery. The ship's propeller engine gave him maneuverability and the bright port lights helped him navigate around the blood cells. A map of the brain was on his dashboard as well as the timer for Shuri's induced sleep. The ship passed through the artery wall and entered the cerebrospinal fluid that coated the brain. As soon as Shuri's sleep started, abnormal brain behavior was reported on the dashboard. Then through the windscreen T'Challa saw what he could only describe as being similar to the northern lights that appeared in the Arctic. This strange body of multicolored lights moved over the top of Shuri's brain in a specific pattern. The body of lights churned violently and then vanished, which perplexed T'Challa. A larger body of lights appeared but the hues were more darker. Sensing the worst, T'Challa injected a sleep inducer into him and he entered the dreamscape. It was his hypothesis that two human brains at such extremely close proximity to each would inhabit the same dream. And he was correct because he came upon Shuri and a woman with a red crown on her head. He attacked the unknown person because his instinct told him that the situation was dire, then Shuri and the woman turned into dust. T'Challa forced himself to wake up and he found that the ship was upside down and the cerebrospinal fluid moved like a storm was over it. T'Challa struggled to have the ship stabilized but he kept hitting the surface of the brain, frightening him. The homing beacon automatically came on for such emergencies but T'Challa could do nothing as the disturbance continued for a long stretch of time until it subsided and the beacon guided the ship to the syringe. Is my sister damaged? Asked T'Challa when the technicians came to help him out of the craft after it was restored to its normal size. No. T'Challa thanked a higher power and went to Shuri. She told him everything about the god of dreams, its mother, and the threat on her children. It will be best if the babies are kept close to you and me, said T'Challa. As bait? Asked Shuri. No. We will find your attacker before she can recuperate, replied T'Challa. Chapter 4 T'Challa, Shuri, Kana, and Okoye sat at the round table to discuss the outcome of the mission. We have to assume that every password and military secret has been exposed, said T'Challa. As for the persons responsible, we have identified them as Neith and her son, the God of Dreams. Shuri killed the God of Dreams and Neith has promised to kill one of Shuri's children. We will be taking that promise seriously. Neith's other children are the sun god Ra, Horus the all-seeing eye, and Set the serpent. Neith may or may not send her children to Wakanda. Furthermore, Nokia has found out that a Hydra sect in the U.S. Council on Foreign Relations and Wakanda's long-lost commando Chang are involved with the national financial crisis, said Okoye. Neith and her son were probably stealing information from Shuri and giving it to Hydra, said Kana. But why was Shuri targeted? Asked Okoye. Because of Reed Richards. I told him that Shuri's recent forays as an Omniverse Avenger had placed mental stress on her. Reed must have passed that on unknowingly to the Council on Foreign Relations, replied T'Challa. A parallel universe Mars Neith's crystal citadel. Neith heard Ra's voice and she looked over the balcony to see the god sparring with Chang's lackey called Gorgon. The sight irritated her and she generated a bow with an arrow made of plasma and she fired the arrow into Gorgon, killing him. Ra looked up at her. Mother, he said. I am not your mother, said Neith. You and the others are my multiple personalities given form. I cannot remake you when you die, and if you die it makes me unstable, weakening me. Ra teleported to her and asked, what is wrong? My personality that dwelt in dreams was killed and I am in so much pain, replied Neith. I have not felt this way since I escaped with you and the others to this part of the Omniverse. I made the deal with Chang to aid his rise to power in return for his protection from attacks from my enemies. It will be okay, mother, said Ra. She held his face because he still did not comprehend his connection to her. Gorgon will report your action when he has regenerated, said Ra. I will handle Chang, said Neith. And no matter what happens to me, don't get involved. Yes, mother. Chapter 5. The refinery was once used to mix Venezuelan crude oil for retail in the American market, but the governor had it closed down for dubious environmental reasons. A Hydra dummy company took over the assets of the refinery and the place was converted to an Omniverse communications center. Nokia followed the incognito governor into the depths of the center. A hologram of Chang spoke to the governor as the man genuflected before the giant image. Chang had the Hydra symbol of the skull and tentacles tattooed on his forehead. He spoke with the distinctive Wakanda accent. What is the answer to the Carroll Quigley formula of governance? Asked Chang. 2 wrestling viewpoints controlled by us, replied the governor. Nokia believed that it was a code to verify the governor's identity. The Wakanda operation has proven that our 2 Hydra sects can work together. My vision is to set up a Hydra network in the Omniverse so that our philosophy will steer the greatest number of people into the right direction, said Chang. We can take advantage of Reed Richards more fully to make that vision a reality, said the governor. So be it, said Chang. My sect has taken the initiative to trick the Wakandans into also helping us. That was unwise and you must end all ties with them immediately. It will be done, said the governor. Wakanda, thank for having my back in the meeting, said Shuri. It was not a big deal, said T'Challa. But I have to take personal responsibility for what happened, said Shuri. Yet I should not have trusted Reed to that extent, so all blame has to rest on me, said T'Challa. But he is your close friend, said Shuri. Time changes friendships and I will have to re-examine the one that I have with Reed. But that will impact the board of the Omniverse Avengers. If there is a splinter in the group, obviously I will side with you on actions to be taken. Reed and his son will have to depend on Ororo's vote, said Shuri. And so will we, said T'Challa. Next story, the Carol Quigley Formula Chapter 1. Chang and his wife M. Coney led the daily martial arts session that all citizens of the parallel Earth had to follow. In the background of the live telecast were soldiers in their Hydra training suits, and they yelled in unison with every kick and punch that they mimicked from their leaders. The 5 o'clock morning session was interrupted by an unusual atmospheric disturbance above the island on which Chang lived in the African Ocean. "Something is trying to come through the anti-teleportation net," whispered M. Coney. A massive jade claw tore through the sky, and through the opening came the jade tiger god with T'Challa the Black Panther inside of the semi-translucent head. A metallic-skinned Shuri rode on the back of the god, and she carried the spear of Bashan-Ga. She threw the weapon at Chang and it stabbed him in the chest. M. Coney activated her Black Panther uniform and pressed the Kimoyo bead that deactivated the anti-teleportation net. The next bead that she pressed contacted the goddess Neith in her home on the planet Mars. "I need you here immediately for a fight against invaders," said M. Coney. Then she gave the hand signal to her soldiers to evacuate the training ground. Neith landed a few feet from M. Coney. The goddess carried a gold bow and she shot several plasma arrows at Shuri. The god speed at which the arrows traveled matched Shuri's movements, and she was struck when she attempted to dodge them, knocking her off the Jade Tiger god. Neith's second volley of arrows were like rods of primordial energy, and they broke the Jade Tiger god's face. T'Challa leapt forward, absorbing the Jade Tiger into the amulet that he carried. His momentum brought him in front of M. Coney, who produced clawed techno-mystical energy gauntlets from her hands. She slashed at T'Challa, but he ducked and swiped at her feet. She leapt over him. He tripled somersaulted and caught her in mid-air with a headbutt to her forehead. "Enough," said Chang as he rose and pulled the spear out of his chest, and the Hydra tattoo on his forehead gleamed. M. Coney shook off T'Challa's blow, and she ended the live telecast with the cybernetics in her mask. Chapter 2. Your response to my interference in Wakanda's affairs is disproportionate. Not one drop of Wakandan blood was spilled, but you have shed mine in front of my people," said Chang. "We have no mercy for traitors," said Shuri as she brushed off the flames from her Membek warrior garb. "Traitor? I have stopped being Wakandan for over a century now," said Chang. "So you don't mind if we strike your name from the honored dead tribute site at Warriors Falls?" asked Shuri. "Go right ahead," replied Chang. Neith charged at Shuri with two short swords, so T'Challa went after the spear of Bashan-Ga to get it across to his sister. He made fake move to decapitate Chang, who defended with the spear, and T'Challa kicked it out of his hands in the direction of Shuri, and she caught it in time to parry Neith's attack. M. Coney clawed T'Challa's CAV muscles while Chang landed a knee to his rib cage. T'Challa used brute strength to punch his assailants away. "Retreat to Wakanda, T'Challa, and do not come back," said Chang. Mentally, T'Challa checked off the objectives of the reconnaissance mission and deemed that they were met. He whistled to Shuri, and she dropped out of hyperspeed to lean against his back as their enemies circled them. Then T'Challa and Shuri teleport to the Omniverse Avengers observation deck, where Reed Richards, Franklin Richards, and Ororo aka the Goddess Storm monitored the mission. "Was trying to kill him on sight really necessary?" asked Reed. "Yes," replied Shuri. "And I agree. We had to make it seem real," said T'Challa. "A warning to us would have been nice," said Franklin. "It is how they operate," said Ororo. "It sounds like you are taking their side." The Omniverse Avengers as an idea was not meant for this type of squabble between interdimensional nations. "We are supposed to be a precursor for a greater network of sharing by people in the Omniverse," said Franklin. "Your opinion is noted," said T'Challa, the chairman of the Omniverse Avengers. "Chang is a credible threat to the Omniverse. Based on a few boastful statements from him about spreading his Hydra philosophy." "That is not enough for me," said Franklin. T'Challa looked across from the young man to his father Reed. Is there something that I should know about? Asked T'Challa. Ororo, my son, and I thought it over and concluded that we needed substantial evidence before bringing the full weight of our power on Shang, replied Reed. T'Challa partly understood that Franklin was afraid to make mistakes with his vast powers. But T'Challa had to be stern. I will take full responsibility for the Shang operation. The Omniverse Avengers will move ahead as planned. The sitting of the board will review my decisions and a vote will be taken, said T'Challa. Chapter 3 Wakanda Shuri was held around her waist by her husband Kana as they stood in the nursery for their infant quadruplet girls. Neith said to me that she still intends to kill one of our babies, said Shuri. We will destroy her by the end of week, said Kana. I was no match for her today. Imagine if her family gets involved, said Shuri. We can find a way to have her family turn on her, said Kana. That may work, you're a genius, said Shuri. Kana subtly swayed her from side to side. What else is on your mind? He asked. Guilt that through me Wakanda was exposed. It was not your fault. I have hidden things from you, and if I had spoken about them, all that has occurred could have been dealt with sooner, said Shuri. Kana turned her around to face him. Stop punishing yourself. We will fix the problems together, he said. I don't deserve you, said Shuri and hugged him. Nick Fury's safe house Nigeria's electricity blackout problems came from mishaps at both the private company that produced natural gas and the company that converted the gas to electricity. One of Nigeria's neighbors was rich in uranium that could be used to build a nuclear power plant in Nigeria, but that idea was always shut down by foreign influences. Nigeria needs to be unstable for the crude oil to get out, said Nick Fury. The African Union wants to have nuclear power plants, but the initiative is meeting resistance from the individual members. And you want to find out why? Asked T'Challa. Africa has always been your beat, said Fury. I cannot trust you again, said T'Challa. What has happened? You are not so versed on Hydra, said T'Challa. Enlighten me. Hydra plays both sides of the battle. They have someone to lose and someone to win, said T'Challa. The Carol Quigley formula is the term for that, said Fury. You are a part of that formula, said T'Challa. Hydra perpetuates through you. I have been fighting those bastards since World War II, said Fury. Wakanda has fought them since the days of Rhodesia. Meaning what? Our sharing of intel is suspended until I can trust you again. Where is this hostility coming from? Because I am uncovering things about Hydra that you should have known, replied T'Challa. Chapter 4 Hydra's philosophy stood on the principle that dictatorship was a great alternative to a democratic republic that was manipulated by who had the biggest wallet. Wakanda's king system was likened to Hydra when Shang was brainwashed. But he took it a step further and he dreamed of a world under the Wakanda style of rulership. When his Hydra sect in Rhodesia used an artifact from the great Zimbabwe city to travel the Omniverse, Shang got a chance to make his vision a reality. Presently he basked in the adulation of his planet's citizens. His performance against the invaders was edited and broadcasted. The populace were happy for such a strong dictator to protect them. He was truly the wielder. Next story, Madness at the Crystal Citadel Chapter 1 Many years ago, Baxter Building, home of the Fantastic Four. Uncle T'Challa, why did you hunt down and imprison my parents? Asked Franklin Richards. His birthday hat was leaned to one side and a popsicle bulged his cheek. How do you know about that? Asked T'Challa. I read Daddy's thoughts by accident, replied the 12-year-old mutant. Are you going to answer me? I needed to test my Black Panther skills against the greatest team of combatants, and your parents along with Ben and Johnny were the challenge that I looked for, said T'Challa. So someday I can test my abilities against you too. Yes, if it is necessary, replied T'Challa. Present-day Saturn, the Skrull planet in a parallel universe. Citadel returned home after the commemoration of the day that the gods of Mars almost annihilated the Skrull civilization. When Citadel entered his dark apartment, a webbing entangled him at the door, which paralyzed him, turned him upside down and suspended him from the ceiling. He thought that it was one of the Magnus arachnids that came out of the ground to feed. He tried to yell, but someone's hand covered his mouth. T'Challa the Black Panther's laser knife shined in the Skrull's face. Citadel recognized the intruder and realized that he was about to be punished for the sabotage that he had done to Wakanda. T'Challa inserted the blade into the Skrull's neck and watched the life fade from his eyes. T'Challa felt a satisfaction that the impersonator of his deceased friend Achebe was dealt with. The body moved on the webbing to the floor where Shuri waited for it. She used a technique from her Membek resurrection gift to get intel from the corpse. In the process, the alien's wrinkled skin aged and his speech slurred. Meanwhile, T'Challa made a large hole in the ground with his spear of light. The hole revealed a burrowed tunnel underneath the home, and something moved in it. When Shuri was finished, the body was lowered into the hole and a large ravenous beast snatched it from the fake webbing. The Omniverse Avengers observation deck, aka the mirror the Wakanda spy Nokia had uncovered where Citadel had stayed in the country from her investigation into the Hydra sect that assisted him. T'Challa was able to get the shapeshifter's true scent from the location that Nokia provided, so when the Black Panther arrived on Saturn he was able to track down the alien. Citadel said that the Magnus arachnids were a failed experiment to make warriors called Super Skrulls. They went underground and killed the surface-dwelling Skrulls for food. The Skrulls kidnapped humans and fed them to the arachnids to appease the beasts. Shang asked them to stop the practice when he took over this dimension's Earth. He was ignored, so he sent Neith, Horus, and Set after the Skrulls, said Shuri. Shang forced the Skrulls that survived into a treaty. Reed Richards ran his hand over his face and asked, "Why was Citadel killed?" "He had no value as a prisoner," replied Shuri. "To be honest, if it were not for the Omniverse Avengers bylaws I would have this operation shut down," said Reed. "Why?" asked T'Challa. "Your actions are too extreme to the point of bloodthirsty," replied Reed. "My children's lives are on the line here," said Shuri. "I understand that, but you are using the Omniverse Avengers resources in a way that they were not originally intended for," said Reed. "Are you saying that we have hijacked the team?" asked T'Challa. "That's what it looks like to me, and you are hiding behind the bylaws," replied Reed. "This is a dispute between two nations that ought to be fixed through other means. Actually, Reed, it is your association with the Mercer, Carnegie, and Ford foundations that got Wakanda and by extension the Omniverse Avengers into this problem," said T'Challa. "What does my future foundation partners have to do with this discussion?" asked Reed. "You wanted tangibles on Shang in order to vote for me in the next sitting of the directors. Well, I am bringing tangible evidence on how the Omniverse Avengers was compromised from the very start through you," replied T'Challa. Reed excused himself from the room. "That was harsh," said Shuri. "It pained me to say those words to him. Big science is his specialty, not the swamp that is big politics that he is being lured into," said T'Challa. "Is this how you thought the Omniverse Avengers would turn out?" "I did not expect the first real mission to be so close to all of us," replied T'Challa. "Have you spoken to Ororo about this?" "No." "Are you going to?" "No, I want her to vote with a clear conscience." "Speaking of conscience, Reed has caused deaths before, so I don't understand his aversion to our methods," said Shuri. "Those deaths occurred when Reed joined teams outside of the Fantastic Four, and my guess is that he did not want to repeat that with the Omniverse Avengers," said T'Challa. He looked at the interdimensional surveillance system that Reed built called the Mirror. It showed both the home of the gods on Mars and Saturn. He had to devise a plan to get rid of the two allies of Shang in a short period of time. Wakanda had dealt with Skrulls and gods before, so T'Challa drew on his experiences and an idea came to him. Chapter 2 Mars. The hum was a phenomenon that affected small towns on Earth, and it caused insanity in the few people who actually heard it. T'Challa and Shuri created devices that modified a sound similar to the hum and used sand devil tornadoes as cover to leave the devices near the home of the gods. The gods' home was twice the size of Wakanda and was in the northern region Mars, where comets seldom fell. Crystal pyramids conducted electricity and transmitted it wirelessly to the interconnected domes that housed the gods. The domes were tall like skyscrapers and covered city-size areas. The speedster Shuri ran into one of the domes. She passed Horus in a flash and left hard light holograms of Ra and set to fight him. She went through the interconnected tunnels and duplicated what she did to Horus on the real set and Ra. Then Shuri searched for their mother Neith. The goddess was in a weaving hall when Shuri tried to ambush her. Neith knocked down the Wakandan without looking at her, but Shuri's metallic skin saved her from the full impact of the blow. "What mischief are you up to?" asked Neith as she rose from the thread spinner. Shuri Cat sprang to her feet and moved away from the strange deer-like creature made of copper thread that came out of the spinner. The other thread-made animals in the hall looked at her. Neith wore a red pharaoh crown. She was slender and decorated in precious metals. "This is your last chance to change your mind about my children," said Shuri. "My word is my bond. I cannot renege on my promise to kill one of your children as compensation," said Neith. "I am sorry, but I have no choice but to kill you." "T'Challa, she is in place," said Shuri. The Black Panther crashed through the ceiling above Neith in his Sith Lord Buster armor. The reverse anti-gravity field around the armor pushed Neith through the floor and into the chamber below. Shuri ran down to Neith and attempted to put mini antimatter bombs on her, but the goddess caught her hands. "It was Odin's father Bor who fought me to a standstill before I came to these worlds, so what chance do you really have against me? I hear my children in battle with themselves and the maddening hum that no doubt came from you. That may work on lesser gods but not on me," said Neith, and she flung Shuri through the walls and into the plaza. Shuri wiped the debris from her eyes. She took out the spear of Bashan-Ga from the holster on her back and waited for Neith. The wristband that allowed her to breathe freely on Mars sparked, but she judged that it would continue to work for a while. The goddess flew above her with T'Challa close behind. With a speed faster than Shuri's, the goddess generated a golden bow and struck T'Challa point blank with an arrow of plasma that penetrated the armor's side. Yet he grappled her. He tightly locked his arm around her neck, pinned her free hand between their bodies and locked a leg around her right leg. Then he pulled her down to the plaza surface and kept her in that submission hold. Neith turned the bow into a sword and rapidly drove it into the armor several times. Shuri stabbed the goddess in the arm and then through the head with the spear. Neith yelled and her movements ceased. "T'Challa?" asked Shuri. "I am fine," replied T'Challa. He released the goddess and the armor broke apart due to the strain from the hold. He came out of the armor and he bled from places where the sword edge had struck him, even though he wore his vibranium Black Panther uniform. Neith's accelerated regeneration started on the head wound while the siblings turned on image inducers that turned them into super Skrulls. Shuri remotely turned off the hard light projections and the hum devices. "Neith's children should sense us soon," said T'Challa. Suddenly Franklin Richards appeared out of a portal. "What madness is this?" asked the man. Chapter 3 T'Challa told Franklin to leave, but he refused. "You will have one species commit genocide against another. What kind of a plan is that?" "I will not allow it," said Franklin. "Did you speak to your father before coming here?" asked T'Challa. Franklin's travels into the future and the Omniverse had aged him to the point that he was physically older than T'Challa but still immature in certain aspects of life. T'Challa took that into consideration as he tried to defuse the conflict. It is a stupid plan and I told father the same thing. You will bring the Omniverse Avengers into disrepute, replied Franklin. We cannot warp reality at will like you can, so we have to make tough decisions, said T'Challa. I said no. Shuri, take Neith to the Magnus Arachnid's tunnels as planned, said T'Challa. Stop, said Franklin, and he pointed a finger at Shuri. T'Challa unlocked an exotic gravity well from the palm of his hand that was similar to the one on the armor. The gravity well pulled Franklin's telekinesis hold away from Shuri. You misinterpreted our plan because it is not Skrulls that we are hitting with the gods but the billions of mindless Magnus Arachnids that plague the Skrulls. With the gods gone, then Chang will not have the leverage over the Skrulls, said T'Challa. And if the gods decimate the planet anyhow? Asked Franklin. That will not happen, said T'Challa. You don't know that, said Franklin. Trust me like you did with your life as a child. Which was a very long time ago, T'Challa, said Franklin, and then he vanished. Neith's children came right after and T'Challa made the teleportation jump to Saturn with Shuri and Neith. The siblings placed Neith in one of the hives of the Magnus Arachnids and the beasts ravaged the goddess, which taxed her regeneration ability. Her children teleported to the scene and they were overwhelmed by the horde. With the gods occupied, the siblings went to Chang's Earth to take down his last level of protection, M'Koni the Black Panther.